Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's episode of the Thrive by 5 podcast, hosted by Family Features. I'm Corey Holcomb, your host, and I want to thank you for being here today. I'm really excited about today's first segment. We work with a lot of different people here at Family Features, both internally and externally, and today we have a member of our Family Advisory Board joining us. So please help me welcome Christina Pocklington to the podcast.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I said the last name right? Perfect. I get self-conscious about that. So you're part of the FAB. How long have you been on the FAB for?
Since its creation in 2003.
That is amazing. So not everyone knows what the Family Advisory Board, we call it the FAB. Affectionately, we call it the Fabulous FAB.
We are fabulous.
You really are. And so a lot of people might not know what the function of the FAB is. I'd love to have you talk about that a bit.
So I've been with the FAB since 2003. We started as the Parent Advisory Council, and we realized that the word parent wasn't as inclusive. So we became the Family Advisory Board. We are a fabulous group of parents that really want to change how family focused our county is. We have so many resources. We have amazing nonprofits, but the parent voice is not always present in everything that everyone does. In an ideal world, parents would be involved with all the interviews for everything that's parent facing. Parents would be involved with every single thing with marketing, but that's not always realistic. So to support Family Futures and potentially other nonprofits that are interested, the Family Advisory Board is really focused on being that bridge. So if you have questions, we have answers. We have our lived experiences. We have what we've seen that works for us, and we've also seen what doesn't work for us. So we know how to use our lived experience to help mostly Family Futures and other nonprofits.
And it's such a great mission. I think society in general sometimes tries to put kind of a blanket idea over everybody. And especially with parenting, those of us who are parents and who are becoming parents know that every experience is different. And the FAB exists really to reflect the diversity of our community. We're made up of moms, and I know there's a dad on the FAB now as well, and different life experiences, different parenting styles. And so we realized as an organization, the best way to reflect the community we serve is to listen to those people. With the current FAB right now, how many members do we currently have?
It's a great question. Kara, Monique, Tara, me.
They're all getting shout outs right now. This is great. I love it.
Yes. Shout out to everyone. And if I missed your name, I'm a horrible person. I just came back from a week of vacationing with my children. My gosh, the four of us in one room. I'm so fried. So appreciate your patience. I'd say we fluctuate around 8. I mean, I'd love to have 10.
And I've met a lot of you since my time here, and it really is a fun group of people. I've been to at least one of your meetings, and I'm actually going to be at the meeting this week as well.
Nice.
Talking about communications and marketing and whatnot. But yeah, there's such different experiences. In addition to being on this board, you meet once a month virtually and talk about things. A Family Advisory Board has a lot of presence in our committees, events and things like that. And then, of course, you volunteer your time at events especially during summertime, which is our busy season. We just had Pride Festival this past weekend and Rock the Block and all these things. So it's really cool that the participation we expect from you and that you give to us is active participation. And it's really important.
The best way to get more parents involved is to be asked by other parents. I know I wouldn't be where I was if I hadn't been asked by a parent that I knew and trusted and respected to say, hey, come join us. This is really cool. We're making things happen. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to have parents at those events is it's not just a professional. It's a parent saying, hey, come join us. We need your voice.
Were you in our programs before you became a FAB member?
Yes, I was.
So yeah, let's talk about that a bit. So like, what was your experience? I guess it was positive enough that you said, yeah, I want to be in the FAB, but let's talk about your parenting journey and how it's been through the guise of Family Futures.
So it's been a little wild. Both of my children had complicated births. And with my son, Riley, we got enrolled in Connections. Same with my daughter, Amy. And with my daughter, I received home visiting services from Healthy Families with the amazing Amanda Vins. Shout out to Amanda. Love you. And also from Infant Mental Health with the amazing Kyle. And from that experience, I saw the value of home visiting and how some people say like, oh yeah, home visiting saved my life. No, it did legitimately save my life. Yes. The relationship that I built with Amanda enabled me to really reach out when I hit a low point and I needed a lot of support. And because of that strong relationship, I was able to say, hey, I need more help than I'm getting. And it was perfect. My needs were met, and it was beyond just the resources and the connections to the services that I needed. It was feeling like I was part of a community.
Yeah.
Connections is really nice because it's kind of like a check-in that you say, okay, is my child on track? Okay, they're not on track. All right, we're in early on. All right, we know he's not on track. We'll get there. And just having someone to talk to. Our current person that we're talking to with Connections is Lisa Brown. We've been firing emails back and forth. And then it got to a point where like, hey, maybe we should talk to Sandy too. And so then Sandy and I are emailing back and forth. And what I'm saying, like we're emailing back and forth, like I'm emailing and then Sandy's emailing and really thinking like, how do we think about this? Asking all the right questions. And I think that's been one of the strengths of Family Futures. It's not been, here's stuff, just do this thing that we think you should do. It's, what do you think about this? Could it be this? And asking questions to match us with the right next steps. It's not something that's prescribed or anything that just, here's what you do. This is parenting. I think any parent can tell you that doesn't.
It's almost like therapy in a way. If people have gone to therapy, it's less about, I mean, if I'm generalizing therapy, but you know, the idea of therapy is that it's not telling you what to do, but it's kind of reflecting those questions back to yourself and helping you think about things. And I think that Connections and what we do here at Family Futures really is about helping you look at it and helping you understand what you need from it and giving solutions based off that.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing. And I think one thing that I'm sure most parents, if not all parents, feel at some point in their parenting journey is kind of the isolation. And I feel like my problems are so specific to me. And who's going to understand what it is? Or I don't want to burden somebody else because you know the burden you're feeling yourself as a parent. And so I think there's a challenge with that. And the community we try to build with you, with people in general here at Family Futures is really important as well. And what I'm kind of wondering about now is, so you talked about your experience, you know, being a parent in Connections, and then you end up, you know, getting recruited to join the FAB.
Even before that, I was a parent representative. So from what I experienced with home visiting, it turned me into a pretty vocal advocate. I think there should be universal home visiting. My goal is by the time my daughter, who is 4, that if by the time she has children, that there's at least some sort of universal home visiting in Michigan. That's my goal.
That'd be great.
Because everyone can benefit from a sense of community and a sense of reassurance that, yes, you are on the right path. You can do this. So yes, parent representative, and that led to me being on the FAB. And it's just been such a wonderful, inclusive journey of this is just the next right step. That from being a parent representative to being a FAB member and just trying to help propel the mission of Family Futures and promote home visiting and improved circumstances for families with young children across Kent County.
I love that so much. Thinking of probably, I don't know if you can answer this for me or not, but thinking back to when you went from just being a parent in the program to being somebody a little more invested in the mission, were there any revelatory or like aha moments you kind of saw as you're in your parenting journey that maybe you hadn't seen before, all of the parent rep and the FAB stuff?
I think you already kind of touched on it, is that's the isolation. And that with my son, despite having a support system with my family nearby and all of that there's still a certain point where you don't want to just dump on people. You feel weird asking for help. And I know I've done it with the family advisory and as a parent rep, and just having that amazing resource that Sandy is just having someone you can go to ask questions or if you're feeling unsure. I know there's some other FAB members that have been involved with being a strong parent leader much longer than I have, and really using them as resources, but also, I mean, they're resources and they're friends, that they're part of my community. And I think back to Heather and some of the conversations that we've had as FAB members, and Heather and Tara, and just I can hear Tara's laugh in my head and just feel so much better about myself when I'm telling embarrassing stories about my children, how I'm like, I could have done a little bit better with that. But just hearing everybody laughing, because it's funny. Sometimes it's self-deprecating. It's community building, because you can say, this is my real authentic self. And then this is how we're showing up. This is who we are. But we can also bring other parents in to accept them as who they are. And that's our big mission, is making a community where everyone is accepted
Yeah.
and loved for who they are.
And what's so special too is, I mean, because you care so deeply in who you are as being a good parent, helping the community be good parents or caregivers, I should say. And also there's like, this, I don't want to say trauma bonding, but it's like, the kind of the laughing about the crazy situations we get into with our kids sometimes. It forms relationships and friendships and people who, it's not just someone you serve on a committee with, it's somebody who's going to ask you about your day, and be care and understand exactly what you're going through. And I think that's another really special thing about the FAB is just the community you build. And I know from my experiences with the FAB and engaging with any of you or all of you, it's so welcoming and so fun. And there's eagerness and just excitement. There's a fire there. And it's such a fun thing to see from this side of it.
No shortage of passion.
100%. I love it so much.
Yeah.
So I know there's lots of stuff the FAB is working on, a lot of stuff we can't even talk about, like, hush, hush, need to know basis kind of stuff. But one thing we can talk about is the fact that you are always recruiting. I don't even know if there's a cap with the number of members at this point, but I feel like there's always a call out to new family members and people who are interested. What would you say are the requirements to be on the FAB and from your experience with it?
Passion for early childhood. Someone who sees that we can do better, but also approach it as identifying our strengths and going from okay, this is something that we're doing well, maybe we could do this better. And one of the things I think we can do better is really elevating male voice.
Yeah, it's a growth mindset. I would imagine too, it's looking at families that look a little different,
Yeah.
We just did a blog last for June. It might be out. I don't know if it is or not yet, but it talked about, how do we talk to our kids about diverse families, whether that is same-sex families or interracial or whatever the case may be, but we try to have that nice representation. So we're always looking for members, looking for people with different life experiences, because our community is so diverse. Our community is not one size fits all. And I think that's the beauty of living here in Grand Rapids and Kent County and looking for people. And we have a really great mix of folks too, on the board right now. Do you know about the process of recruitment and whatnot? So someone saw this and was like, oh, I want to learn more about the FAB. What could they do to learn more?
Family Futures website, I believe it's up there. We had talked about that as I'm trying to figure out what exactly, because there's a lot of things that we're like, okay, this is what we should do next. But we don't always, because we only meet once a month and our meeting's on Wednesdays. So we're following up on things of what's currently going on and where can we go for recruiting. Website, it definitely should be on the website of where I'm interested in being a FAB board member. And if not, email Emily Vanderboss.
Yep. You can also email Rachel Warner and we'll include email links and whatnot as well. We're working on some more comprehensive stuff to include the FAB a little bit more prominently on the website as well. So we got a lot of things cooking that I can't necessarily say either. So it's like, it's whose secret is bigger right now in a way. But I think really if you have a desire to help people be better parents and help have your experiences be considered and be thought of, because we try to cast a wide net of thought and ideas, but also too our experiences inform what we do. And I think that is part of it as well. Do you have to be a parent to be on the FAB?
You do have to have children.
That's
it is the family advisory board.
Yeah, so you never know. I just didn't could a teacher do it if they were single? But that's good to know.
And I think that every voice is valuable.
Yes.
And there's so many different ways to contribute to the work that Family Future is doing. It might not necessarily be on the FAB, but there's so many ways. We're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for more people to be involved in. I know there's occasional surveys, there's community events where we'd love to just meet and connect and hear stories.
And the other thing that I would be remiss in not saying, and it's something that people think about often, we do compensate our FAB members for their time. We make sure that, it's something that you're giving of yourself to us in a way. So we want to make sure we honor that space as well. So some people would be like, I'd love to do it, but I can't volunteer. Well, we will compensate you for your time. And that's part of it as well. So I think that is really impactful as well. It's something that should be done more often, I think, too. Anything else we want to talk about today? I'm trying to think. Do we cover all the topics? Louise, how are we doing on time? We need a lot more time.
I'm thinking. So we need 40 minutes and we're at 20?
Well,
even before editing.
We try to shoot 40 and then so we can cut down on things.
Okay.
We talked about recruiting, what the FAB exists. Do you have more about the history of the FAB? or the council?
First meeting was September 20th. Okay. Trying to see if there's anything from here. We could do a question about family forward marketing, because that's kind of what we're doing right now.
I love that.
And how the FAB is giving feedback with our newsletters. They're giving feedback on the podcast and really helping making sure that what is being delivered to families is what families need and want.
I love that. Let's do that. So I know from my sorry, Luce, I'll wait a sec.
Pause.
Okay, we're good.
Oh.
So one thing I've noticed for my experience with the FAB is that I can always come to the FAB with ideas for communications for marketing. For a silly example is one day I was thinking about radio advertising, and I asked the FAB, what channels do you guys listen to? And a lot of them said, we don't listen to the radio. We listen to podcasts and Spotify. And that helped inform me in a way. Earlier I mentioned I'm going to be at the FAB meeting on Wednesday. I'm presenting some stuff to you guys and talking about things I'm thinking about. I will probably get a lot of opinions on whether we should do those things or not. That includes podcasts, that includes newsletters. I know that, everything we do, of course, it goes through our internal process, but it also goes to, does the FAB think families need to hear it?
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. Like, and again, too, with these podcasts as well, there's a lot of topics we discuss that are informed by our families and what our FAB members say people are asking questions about. And I think that's really important as well. You talked about how the FAB has a goal to kind of not just be something that exists for Family Futures, but for community organizations as a whole. Do we partner with any other organizations right now?
A lot of our members are also part of the Home Visiting Provider Network Local Leadership Group. I know that's quite a title, but me, Kara, and Monique all received home visiting services, so we're also a part of that. And as a part of our work as parent representatives, we're also supporting local agencies get that family voice into what they're doing. I think one of the really cool things that Family Futures has been doing with the Family Advisory Board is bringing in different staff members every week and saying, hey, or every week, every meeting, which would be really cool if it was every week, but once a month is good too. That is this what the parents need? And is this in a medium that the parents will use? Some parents are on X, formerly known as Twitter, all the time, and some people are not. Mm-hmm. Some people are on Facebook all the time. Some people are not. So getting kind of as wide of a representation as possible to know how to best reach families where they're at. And sometimes it's even print marketing. We did a marketing push before we redid the parent support site of bookmarks and paper flyers that we put in libraries. We still have some left that we can still push out now that the parent support site is being redone and is almost ready to go completely live, which is so exciting. That's not just a FAB project. That is a Kent County-wide project that we're so excited is finally rolling out soon. And make the FAB members, some of them have been testers to say, okay, this works for me. This does not work for me. I think there's a lot of point where organizations, particularly nonprofits, can be like, oh, we need to reach families. We need to recruit more families. How do we do that? Ask the families. Say, how do we reach you better? Okay, we can identify which areas we are not reaching. So then we need to go find a parent, someone we can talk to in that region, say, okay, how do we reach families better in 507? Yeah. If we're not getting anyone from the zip code, we need to talk to the parents and say, okay, what events do we need to be at? Where do we need to be? One of the other strengths, we've got so many strengths. I love the FAB, is we use a program called Asana. So we can suggest events. We can bring things forward that other people can run with, which is awesome. That's not something that happens everywhere. We're like, we should do this. And they're like, okay, we're running with it. So with the marketing, particularly with the parent support site, are we seeing pictures of real families? Are we representing everyone? Does everyone feel seen and heard? But also, does it work well? If I'm a mom scrolling through on my phone and it's just text and text and text, I'm out. And sometimes organizations need someone who's a parent, not necessarily an employee, because an employee wouldn't say, our website sucks. That's not something I can imagine most employees saying, but as a parent, you can say, I don't want to use this. We need to change it. And I think that's the power of the FAB is that we are parents and we can speak our minds and we're not worried about a paycheck. We just want the work to be done and we want to support that work.
I think at times the mission can feel a little daunting because it seems like no matter how much we extend our capacity as an organization, the need will always surpass the ability to meet those needs. That kind of sounds pessimistic. I don't mean it to be, but what I'm trying to get at is that this is something that can feel really daunting. But from what I see, both on my side as a staff member, the fab side, everybody who's here, like the support system and the hunger to get ourselves as close to those leveling those two lines as we can, it's always there. It's never, man, this is too much. Like we gotta, there's always more we can do, and there's always a eagerness to do it. So I think that is really inspiring and exciting, and it really rejuvenates my personal drive to the work we do, to the mission we do, and whatnot. I'm sure the same for you.
I always think about it as one family at a time, that if we can get the right information to the right family at the right time, that is a massive step. That changes that family trajectory. Home visiting changed my family's trajectory.
Yes.
Because someone made a phone call, and it was that simple. And we are in a time where things are changing so fast day to day. And it's very different to talk to a human versus putting it into an AI program of saying, how should I do this? Or what's my next step? Or you don't get community from AI. You don't get connection from AI. You don't get your metaphorical bucket filled and that emotional reassurance that things seem tough right now, but good always wins.
Yeah, you don't get the human experience, the human. You can have, like, AI is a great example because you can pop something there and it can give you a theorized or something that, based off of what everything else is saying, but it's not a personal experience. AI doesn't have children, didn't have to deal with sleep regression or colicky babies or potty training. And those experiences definitely come from real people living those situations. Parenting is such a wonderful yet extremely challenging journey. A friend of mine once said, parenting doesn't make your life easier, but it makes it richer. And even me, I just celebrated my son's 8th birthday this weekend. And my wife and I, as parents do, we'll get on Facebook and look at old memories, pictures. I'm sure we all do this. And parents probably, they don't admit they do it, but we're annoyed with our kids. The kid's in bed and we get there like, let's look at pictures when he was little and sweet and innocent. And we just get all sappy. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenging journey, but it's such a good one if that's what you want to do with your life. And here at Family Futures, that's what we care about. And the Fab cares about it. And one thing that we didn't talk about too much about was the parent support site. And not everyone knows what that is. The parent support site exists to basically help pair you with support systems in Kent County based on your preferences, what your needs are and whatnot. Do you want to talk more about that a little bit?
The parent support site's focused on home visiting services.
Yes.
So you'll answer questions. It seems like a lot, but it's to put those answers into our matching program. So it'll take all the information that you put in, whatever you feel like you're struggling with, or demographics, everything that combines into what makes you want to be matched with the best program for you. So when you're patient and you go through all the questions, you're matched with programs, and then it's up to you to control who your information goes to. The first time I filled it out, I got Healthy Families. I connected with Healthy Families. That was perfect. And then as things got to a point, I was like, okay, let's see what other options there are. And that's how I got connected with Infant Mental Health. But my criteria changed because my circumstances changed. Each home visiting program in Kent County has different requirements. So for example, with Healthy Families, you need to enroll before your child is 3 months. You can even enroll when you're expecting and receive home visiting services before the baby's born, which is huge because some people have easy pregnancies. I don't know what that feels like. I know if I had found out that there was someone I could talk to about my pregnancy experiences, I think things would have gone a lot better for me.
Sure. And that site's going to be, we're currently rebuilding the new version of it. And we'll be launching that soon through their site, but also we'll hyperlink it on our website as well. And I think that's going to be really beneficial for a lot of folks. And really, Family Futures, I mean, we can't say it enough. We're here for families. We're here to help you. It's a free to you program. And the benefits, I hear a lot of people say, why not try it? You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And there's we're judgment free. People, I know people here home visiting, they get a little antsy. They're like, someone will come to my house and like judge me because I didn't do the dishes today. No, they've seen it all probably, and they don't care. Like they're focused on you. They're not focused on everything around you.
Bear with me. This is a interesting analogy.
Okay.
But I view home visiting kind of like Santa in Miracle on 34th Street. That they just love you for wherever you are. Santa doesn't judge your house. Santa doesn't judge anything. Santa wants to meet your needs. And in Miracle on 34th Street, if their store didn't have it, 31st Street, I don't know why I said 34th, that if they didn't have it, they'd connect you to someone who does. Family Futures is amazing, but we can't meet every need every single time. So we can connect you to all the different services. And I think that's one of the powers, not just of the home visiting site, but there's also Help Me Grow. There's all these wonderful websites. And that when we work together, not as a hub of information, but we're just one of the nodes, that we're connected to so many different amazing organizations. Great Start Family Coalition, 211, all these different resources all come together to meet needs in a non-judgmental, open, trusting way. And I think, all the parents are just worried about being judged. I know there was a point in a restaurant where my daughter was losing it, and she just looked at me and screamed. And I felt all the heads turn, and I was like, everyone's judging me. But I'm also realizing maybe they're also looking with reassurance and support. That maybe I'm feeling judged because I'm judging myself right now. But that's not coming from other people. That I can only talk of my experience with Amanda and Kyle and my wonderful providers at early on, but I never once felt judged.
Yeah.
I felt uplifted, supported, encouraged. Am I allowed to quote Bluey?
Go for it.
So there's an episode where Bluey's mom, Chili, is really struggling, and she connects with another mom, and the mom just looks at her and says, "You're doing great." And everyone just bawls. I mean, if you're a parent and you're not watching that episode, you're just going to bawl because you need someone to look at you and say, "You're doing great."
That's 100%. And I think we forget that if our kids are happy, healthy, fed, I mean, even healthy too. I mean, like, if you're trying to keep them healthy, and you're already off to a good place. Parenting is the hardest for those who care about it, and who want to be the best parents. So I think that's really good as well. Thank you for being here, Christina. It's so great to hear your experience. And every parent has their own experience, and they're whys. They're big. Why do I do this? And it's so great to see you on the Fab and to get to interact with you more directly too. So I really appreciate you being here today.
So glad I could be here.
And thank you all. We'll be back after this short break. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast for the next segment. Today on the show, we have a special guest, our resident early child care expert, Sandy Portko, PhD. Sandy, thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Corey. Glad to be here.
You're kind of a well-known staple here at the office. As a personality, as an expert in childcare, let's talk a little bit about what you do here so people get an idea of what qualifies you a little bit, but also what kinds of stuff you do for us.
Okay. Well, I do have a doctorate in developmental psychology from Wayne State University.
Okay.
And I taught in the psychology department at Grand Valley for over 30 years. And every semester I had at least one, if not two, child development courses. So they were the ones that were aimed at students who thought they might want to go into teaching so that they could understand what kids do. And I also am the mother of 5 and the grandmother of 10. And I will be a great-grandmother in about 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
I have a great-grandson on the way. So I've also worked in daycare settings for several years. And before I went to college, I went through a hospital-based nursing program. So I was a registered nurse for 15 years until I got tenure.
One thing I'm curious about, this is kind of more of a side note, but you have children, you have grandchildren, you're going to have a great-grandchild coming up, and I'm sure you have a lot of information and knowledge that you can share with them. How many times are they like, "Mom, we've heard enough"? Are they pretty receptive to hearing what you have to say when it comes to child development?
Actually, it's really interesting because there was a gap between child number 2 and child number 3, a little over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So the 2 older ones kind of like learned on the job because they were helping with their younger siblings. And if one of them did something that they thought was really stupid or whatever, they'd ask me, "Is that normal?" And then I would explain it to them. So, and then the reverse happened is that when the older ones got married and started families, the younger ones were now in their teens, and they would go and visit a lot. They'd play with their nieces and nephews. They'd ask the same kind of questions that their brother and sister had asked years before. It was almost like an apprenticeship. And so now they will ask me if this, if that, what's going on. But I try not to interfere with their parenting.
That's fair. That's totally valid. I was just curious about that. So that's fascinating.
I did have to do it once, step in. My one grandson was not developing speech normally and seemed like he always had a little cold. So when it was time for his 2-year checkup, he had 12 words, only 2 of which could be understood by anybody else. So I told her to make sure she asked her pediatrician about it. And when she came home, he said to give it another 6 months. And I said, all right, mom hat's coming off. This is Dr. Portko talking to you. And I'm going to tell you what I would tell anybody that gave me, any student that gave me the story. Because he has a lot of colds, chronic runny nose, you need to have his hearing checked. And I had the information, the resources to tell her where to go. So she did, and he had hearing losses in both ears. And so they tried a conservative approach of, like, they assumed it was likely allergy based. So he had an infant toddler safe antihistamine prescribed, but it really didn't do anything. After he was 2.5, which would have been his second checkup if she had followed the pediatrician, at 2.5, he was getting tubes in his ears. He had visited an ENT specialist. He got tubes in his ears, and within 3 weeks, he was speaking in 7-word sentences with words that people could understand. So that was one big time that I felt that it was important that I interfere.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, that's great. Now we're here, we're in summer, the weather's looking nice, and this is the time of year where people start going on vacation, and we thought this would be a great day to talk about the episode. We affectionately call it Vacation Expectation. I think as parents, especially when you're a parent of a new child, you have this mindset of what vacations are like, especially when you're just a couple, and you do this and do that, and everyone has this idea of what their vacations are going to be, and they go, now we have a child, we can have this experience with them, and it's a very specific experience that they're used to. But I think we find with children is that the reality is a lot harder. But it's an experience that, even if it comes with challenges, it's something that every family should do if you're able to do it, even if it's a small-scale weekend trip or a overnight hotel stay, because there is something very beneficial for children that they get from vacation experiences, I'm sure, as young children.
Absolutely. One caveat I would have, especially for parents, first-time parents with an infant, it's probably a good idea, if you're going to take a vacation with an infant, go somewhere close, and if possible, maybe limit it to visiting close friends or family.
Sure.
There are so many, as you pointed out, challenges to traveling with an infant. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary, and there are no choices. If you have a choice, make it an easy vacation with close friends and family, maybe even in their home, so that you can minimize the drastic changes in environment for the infant. Most likely, depending on the age of the infant, their sleep is going to be interrupted, likely nap time is going to be interrupted. They are going to be exposed to different sights, different smells. Their feeding routine might be altered. And all of those changes are going to affect the baby and, in turn, the parents, and in turn, the quality of the experience.
That is so true. I'm going to use a personal example for myself. My son, if you ask him what his favorite vacation destination is, because we don't really go very far, we typically go to Frankenmuth, which, if you're from Michigan, Frankenmuth, Little Bavaria, world's largest Christmas store. My son loves to stay at the hotel there, and there's an arcade. That's why he loves being there. So he always wants to spend all his time at the arcade, and now they have a water park and a ropes course. And so I think every year we've done some sort of version of a visit, even during COVID, even if it was a day trip. And I think for me, the biggest thing I've learned as a parent, especially as my son is older, he's actually turning 8 next week, so I've done this a few years now. But for him, it's being realistic about the expectation. And I think that's the first thing. If anybody walks away from this episode thinking about one thing, it's rearranging expectations for yourself and for your child. And we'll talk about, there's a whole lot of stuff today to talk about, but I think about my experience and how often I get really short-fused as a parent, especially on vacation, because I consider myself the facilitator of fun. My wife kind of feels bad because I don't have a lot of fun on family vacations, and I don't mean that I don't enjoy being with my family. I just mean that I'm so focused about trying to get everyone from point A to point B that I forget the fun part in the middle, and that's something I'm working on. But I know too there are times like where my son is so excited to be there and he's dysregulated or not in control of his feelings, and then I get short-fused because he's not listening, and then I get upset, and that so having a little bit of a meltdown during vacations is not uncommon. But I think the big thing to realize first off is that just managing your expectations and understanding that we've talked about this before, but there's this thing called the 80-20 theory, and that 80% of your experience on vacation with children is going to be a lot of the same routines, the same processes and procedures, and only 20% will actually be something where you create memories. Of course, that changes, but I think a lot of us have this idea of taking our child to Disney, and the experience they're going to have and what it's going to mean for us, but a lot of it's going to be routine. And I think that's the first big point we should talk about today is routine.
Absolutely, which is why I would just caution new parents, if you're wanting to have the experiences that kids are going to remember, most kids are not forming very coherent memories before the age of 5.
Yes.
And so big special events that parents think are going to be really impressive and make long-lasting memories for their kids are not necessarily going to be what the kids remember. You brought up Disney World. My son and his family went with his in-laws to Disney World when their youngest daughter was 4, and she's now 21, so I don't have a clear memory exactly of what happened, but she had allergies, and something happened either in the park or as they were heading back to the hotel, and she had to be taken to the hospital, and she went by ambulance because she was having trouble breathing. And after they got back and she was fine, they were able to finish their vacation at Disneyland, and she had breakfast with the princesses and all of the things that her parents had planned for them. And a couple of weeks after they got home, she was visiting, and I just said, what's your favorite part of Disneyland? And she looked at me and she goes, the ride in the ambulance. And my son looked at me and he said, we could have just hired an ambulance and given her rides here, and it would have, cost a whole lot less. And but that's it. You just don't know what they're going to remember.
I remember seeing something recently. It was a social media post, but I think it's true is that when you take kids, I think a lot of people have the expectation of creating memories for the kid, but for a lot of us, I think it's memories for us as adults, as parents, because we get the experience of raising children. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a kid to Disney when they're young, but also realize, too, that it's probably going to be your memory more so than theirs.
Exactly. Yeah. And not to be upset and sometimes you get there, and even if the child has seen, let's say, video ads of certain rides, for example, once they get there and actually see the ride, they may not want to go on it.
Yeah.
And all I can say is, please don't force them.
Exactly.
It's not like, hey, I drove all this way to bring you here to get on this ride. Now you're not going to do it? No. Get on the ride.
That reminds me of a trip to the Detroit Zoo, and my son was obsessed with seeing a gorilla for the first time. We get to Detroit Zoo. He's 2, I think. He's so excited to go see the gorillas. We get to the gorilla, and it's an open enclosure, but they're pretty far away. He sees a gorilla, and we start walking towards the enclosure, the barrier, and he has a meltdown.
Oh, yeah.
Just terrified, didn't want to see it, didn't want to be around it. And we kind of laugh about it now, but he was terrified, but he was so set on seeing this one thing, and then it happened, and he was like, nope, not doing it. So, yeah. But yeah, back to kind of what we're talking about. I think the first thing we talk about with vacations and trips and everything is routine. So times might change between when they nap, when they eat. But I think trying to keep a consistent schedule of the routine, the procedure of things.
It can be hard when you're vacationing with other people.
Yes.
And the younger the child is, closer you have to stick to his or her own routine. If they're used to having a snack at such a time, pack snacks. If you know you're driving somewhere special for a meal, make sure you've got extra snacks, because their little bodies are geared toward what they have known for the last however months or years. And the closer you can maintain their own routines, the easier the vacation will be and the less likelihood of major meltdowns. Don't keep kids up late. Try to plan things that work around their bedtimes. Even if one parent may have to stay with the child, or if there's a grandma you can bring along for childcare so that the parents can do grown-up activities, that's great. But I think you have to respect the child. And a lot of times, people say, oh, children are so adaptable. Well, they are, but my feeling is why force adaptations that they don't have to make and that you can avoid with careful planning to maintain that routine.
Exactly. And I think part of it too is vacations can be such a drastic change. So and children, they can handle change, but if it's a drastic change, it's not going to go the way you want it to. So it's like jump in vacation example, like a pool. Some people jump in and it shocks their system, but some people slowly walk in. That's what you should do with a kid. Slowly integrate elements that they're familiar with so that it can compensate for the times when the challenges are going to be there. And especially if you're traveling with other people, there's challenges, there's different schedules. Sometimes if you're the one friend in the group who has a child and doesn't, everybody else does, you all kind of have to manage your expectations. And every child also has different things. So let's say you're traveling with a group of friends, and I'll talk about my experience with that later on too, but kids have different sleeping schedules. So, every kid's different, every family's different. So I think go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and every family has different expectations.
Yes.
And they have different ways of interacting with their children. And there are families who interact in ways when my kids were little and we'd be visiting people or whatever, or even just taking them to the museum or something like that, just a quick afternoon visit somewhere. I would see people interacting with their children in a way that I would never dream that I believe nobody should interact with a child in that way. And my kids would notice, and they might say something at the time. But you have to realize that can happen if that happens with friends, that you had no idea they felt that way because you'd never been in that situation with them before.
Yeah.
One of my children was very intense, and he obviously couldn't have everything he wanted. And I would just calmly deal with him. And then sometimes, depending on where we were and who we were with, I would hear murmured all he needs is a good spanking.
Yeah.
And things like that I personally know are not going to work. And instead, they're going to be harmful to that child for a long time.
Oh, totally. And I think one thing too, and of course, managing kids' emotions is a part of it, but also managing our emotions when we go on vacation, especially when we have someone to watch out for, someone who's little who depends on us, in a more heightened state of awareness and our feelings. But you have to realize too, your kid is my kid is neurodivergent, for certain ADHD. It's on paper, so we know for sure. But he's the kind of person that is so excited about everything, and trying to get him to think rationally at times, especially on vacation, is just a hard thing. His emotions are excited. It's not a bad place to be, but I have to recognize it. And then for myself as well, to realize, okay, maybe I'm being a little bit. Why am I getting so neurotic or anal about this specific thing? And so I think be just giving yourself the space and giving your kids the space to know, yes, things are not going to go the way they planned. Things are going to change, and you have to try to wrap your head around that.
Exactly. And to be fair, children are not rational.
Not at all.
At all. I will never forget, my oldest son was interacting with his little brother who was about 4. And he came in, I was fixing dinner, and he came into the kitchen and he said, "Mom, somebody's got to teach this kid logic." And I said, "Huh?" I'm very formal, right? Yeah. I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I was just this, and he just came out with this." And I said, "Honey, he's 4. He's not going to have logic. Kids do not even begin to start to think logically before the age of 7, and it's a very slow process. Yeah. Even if you tell them, if this, then this, you have to be very, very slow, deliberate, and concrete. And you have to explain, if this, then this, and why. And even then, that's not going to make them logical,
Yes.
but they will at least understand why you are saying what you're saying. And they can then, maybe think about that later. But that's one reason. That's a great example of why I believe, if possible, every parent should be able to have a course in child development, so that they know what to reasonably expect of kids at different ages. To expect to try to put a 2-year-old down early so they'll go to sleep so you can keep them up later at night for something is not realistic.
Yes. And that's actually a great segue point, too, I think, because one thing we should talk about, it's just as important as food, is sleep.
Yes.
And the challenges of sleep time routines. I will give you a very solid example of this from my experience, and I'm sure you have your own too, but I could give you any sort of scenario you have experience with, I'm sure. But
maybe not.
Frankenmuth, my son he's less than 2, he's over a year old, somewhere in that sweet, wonderful, challenging spot, and it's bedtime. He was at that point was probably a 7:30 p.m. bedtime kid. We're adults, we still have a lot of energy to do stuff, but we're like, how do we get our kid to fall asleep in a hotel, a new situation he's not normally used to? I distinctly remember bringing tape and a shower curtain, and we didn't put him in the bathroom, but we cordoned off near the entrance of the hotel room. We put his pack and play, and then put a shower curtain to divide us between him, and then we brought his sound machine, and so we were trying to get him in the mode. He had his blanket, his favorite blanket, and a lot of things that he's used to, but he was still, Mommy, Daddy, trying to talk to us. And we're sitting there in the dark at 7 o'clock at night, as good parents do, and trying to be quiet and barely acknowledge him unless he needs us so he can sleep. And we're trying to communicate. We're literally a bed apart, just texting each other to talk. And so I think about that experience. That's my experience. But a big challenge comes with sleep in a new, again, the whole experience is new for a child, but really it's how can we help a child where there's a lot of sensory overload. It's a new place. It might smell different. It might feel different. Kids I'm in a pack and play. Why am I not sleeping in my crib? Or why am I not on the bed? Let's talk about that a bit. I think one of the things I would say is probably for all parents, do your best, or caregivers, I should say, do your best to recreate as much as you can from the home environment.
Absolutely. And if the child needs, you mentioned several good things, his favorite blanket, his sound machine, things that he usually uses to fall asleep.
Yes.
And one thing that occurred to me is if you're going to be, let's say you knew you were going to be having that vacation, or maybe a longer one where he would need to sleep in a pack and play.
Yes.
One thing that might be helpful is to maybe for a few days, depending on how long he's going to have to be in it, maybe for a few days before the trip, before you leave, put him down for a nap in the pack and play, so that the child can kind of get used to, this is just another place that I sleep. I really think that's a good idea. And I would advise it, especially if your family home has upstairs bedrooms and you know that you're going to be going somewhere and he'll have the pack and play, then put the pack and play in a different room and put him to sleep in there with his favorite stuffy, with his favorite blankie, with his sound machine, with anything kids have. A favorite nightlight, a soft little lamp or something that they can take with them.
Yes.
And if you can recreate those situations that he's going to be in beforehand, that will help him acclimate to the changes when you make them.
Most definitely, yes. And I think also, too, just trying to be consistent with that bedtime routine. I know that sometimes you travel time zones, sometimes you travel where there's more happening at a certain time of day. And so I know my kid personally, he's the kind of kid who does not want to miss anything, so he will actively fight to stay awake. But yeah, just trying to keep a consistent flow for the kids. Again, as much normalcy as you can give them in an unnormal environment is always ideal.
And if they're too young for the experience, maybe don't do it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of harsh in a way, but if your goal as a parent should be to raise the healthiest, best prepared, as well adjusted as is humanly possible child to grow into adulthood.
Yes.
And that may mean giving up some things for a while or delaying them for a while. My kids, all of them, we're all history geeks, and I'm not sure why. And so one of the things that we did when the youngest was 3. The baby was actually just turned a year. The next one was 3, the next one was 6, and then we jumped up to my 2 teens. And they wanted to go to the Renaissance Fair. And I knew that the 3 and 6-year-old would have a great time. I knew that my 2 teens would be taking off and taking in everything, and they would have a great time. I also knew the baby would not have a great time. So fortunately, we were able to take her. My sister offered to watch her for the day, and that's what we did. We made it comfortable for the baby, pleasant experience for the others.
I love that. Another component, I think, of vacation we should talk about today, and this really kind of broadens out a bit more, but I think of traveling with the baby, and that comes down to car rides specifically. And my experience, I mentioned earlier, when my son was just over a year, my nephew was almost 2, so this was my wife, my son, me, my brother-in-law, my at the time sister-in-law, and our nephew. We all went to Canada together. We went to go visit my mother-in-law's childhood home in Edmonton, Alberta. And I will say that I do not enjoy flying. I get really bad anxiety when I fly, so they were all gracious enough to say, let's do a road trip as a family. And the adults took turn driving, and it was about a 36-hour experience. And I'm pretty sure that's why my son hates car rides now. He does not remember it probably, but he was stuck in a car seat most of that trip. And so I think we need to talk about the experience of car travel, and that, because I think that, especially even if you're doing like a day trip to a wedding or something like that, where you go and visit family across the state or out of state, and there's something that's unfamiliar with the child, there needs to be some planning. There needs to be snacks, needs to be multi-sensory experiences, whether that's a book or sometimes a tablet or a phone, or I know that's kind of a little more divisive, but things that a child can keep engaged by.
Yes, and I also think you need to be realistic about how far to drive without a break. A number of years ago, we took the 3 youngest ones to Disney World, and we drove from Michigan. We left in sub-zero weather, but we had already decided that we would be stopping. We weren't going to go straight through. We were already going to be stopping halfway and spending the night, and everybody got a break that way. Now, the youngest was 7 at that point, so that was a very realistic. But I also realized that very few people can handle straight through driving. And I'm sure on your trip, the adults dozed when they weren't driving.
Yes.
Because you just can't do that. And I think that even if you're taking across the state, for example, to a wedding, if possible and you can stay somewhere, go at night when the kids can sleep a big chunk of the way. We have done that more than once. Leave, like the kids are sleeping, they're in their pajamas, put them in their car seats, and take off. And whenever you can work around your child's schedules like that, it usually works out much better.
I totally agree with that. And that is a good point, too, yes. Trying to leave. I remember distinctly being a child and taking a trip to Florida. We drove to Florida, and our parents packing us in the car 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night to make the drive. But for traffic's sake, that's one thing. I mean, that's always better traffic.
Absolutely.
But just to have the routine of sleeping through all that stuff. I remember falling asleep in Michigan, waking up in Tennessee. So
I think that's where we spent the night.
Yeah, and I think but if it's a daytime trip, if that just works the best for you, it's, scheduling times for bathroom breaks, eating, I can't tell you how many rest stops we stopped at or gas stations where we just let the boys get out and just play in the grass.
Yes.
And sometimes it was stopping at a rest stop, and changing them into their pajamas and stuff like that. Little things like that really do help. Now, as a child, we had one of those big vans that had like the convertible bed in the back, but we also had a VCR and a little TV, so we brought movies too. And now a lot of cars nowadays too have. And they can be godsends for long trips. They really are. My wife's minivan has a TV, and whenever we go somewhere with my son, we pack a big box of movies he can pick through. we do try to keep him more engaged than just watching TV. We say, read for a while or color as well. I don't know if you know, Melissa and Doug makes these little color pads. They're with water. So it's like you fill the pen with water and it's like a little brush. Doesn't make a mess, but the kids can paint the colors in, and then it dries up and you can use it again later on. That was one thing we used for my son for so many years, and he loved it.
I didn't know that they made color pads that were reusable. We had coloring books like that when my kids were little and when I was little. The colors were imprinted in the paper pages, and you just dipped a brush in water, and of course each page was all one color.
And then, of course, having lots of snacks and activities. My wife, she is the trooper in the family because, I'm the one driving. She's the one who has the box of activities and snacks in front of her. So when my son was like, hey, Mom, I'm hungry, or I don't want this book anymore, she could just reach back, grab the book, reach down, and then, just switch it out. So having lots of things to keep them excited about, or, finding ways to help. And when we were kids, there wasn't this much we could do. And I'm somebody who gets motion sickness so I can't read in the car. For us, I remember it was just looking out the window and just, watching the rain hit the glass, or just looking at trees whiz by. So I think kids have an advantage nowadays over what we had.
Well, I remember with my kids, we would try to play games. How many red cars can you count between here and there? How many different kinds of billboards do you see? I mean, I would just try to think of kind of like a moving I Spy game.
Yes.
And then, what was it? Then there was something popular when they were kids. If they saw a VW Beetle, slug bug bite, no slug bug back. That kept them going for quite a while.
Not that we want you slapping your siblings, but
No. Right.
And then the license plate game too, where you would get a map of the U.S. and say, okay, how many states can, and that's always fun, especially on long trips because you see a lot, like those semis coming back and forth across the country.
Yeah, I think that we would sing. I mean, they'd have favorite songs, or I'd put the car radio on, and we found a station they liked, and we would just all have our sing-alongs.
My son has a Spotify playlist, and he always, every trip, whether it's 15 minutes or 3 hours, it's, hey, can we play my playlist? I'll say, sure. We'll just pop his music on, and it's fine. Set it to where it plays in the back, and my wife and I can talk, and he's none the wiser. One thing we would be remiss if we didn't talk about airplane rides, too, I think. Now, I do not, my son has not ridden on an airplane yet. We're hoping next year with a trip to Disney, maybe. But a plane is a different experience, too, because kids have ears that pop. Kids are whiny, they're crying, they're in a place where they're around a lot of people who do not know them. And
they're confined. That's a problem also traveling with young children, younger than your son. The younger the baby, well, let's put it this way, 2 and 3 months old typically don't fight the car seats as much as older infants and toddlers.
Yeah.
You have to schedule breaks for them.
Yes.
Because that confinement they're going to start screaming after a while. If you don't schedule short breaks to at least get out, like you said you guys did. You got out, you played in the grass for a little bit, and then you got back in.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to take longer. But if your child can run off some of that energy, then you can hope for a nap when you do the next leg of your journey. Airplanes are a totally different kind of animal. And it's hard to put earplugs in a baby. Mm-hmm. And have seen one family. I was on a plane a few months ago, and this family was traveling with an infant that to be about 5 months old.
Sure.
And a little boy who I guess to be about 2.5. The 2.5, they had noise-blocking earphones for, and he did great. He was incredible. They brought activities, they brought snacks, they had the ear-blocking headphones, and he was perfectly okay. Mom had the younger one, and they weren't able to sit together. And Mom took the infant because she was going to need to feed her. So she had the infant supplies with her.
Sure.
He had the little toddler supplies with him. And at one point during the flight, she walked up to her husband. I happened to be sitting next to them. And she asked him, she said, I need a short break. Can you go and change her diaper? And she had brought the diaper bag and everything in. So he got up. And when he got done changing her, he said, I'll sit back here for a little while with her. You can sit up here. And so, I mean, they clearly were tag teaming.
Sure.
They had, in my opinion, nailed this aspect of parenting and traveling. I have no, either they're extremely well prepared or they had done this before and it was a very smooth running machine.
Yeah.
And it
That
doesn't have to be a nightmare.
That's a good point too, and I've even seen some people do where they will pass out to people around them like it's a little silly card. It's like, this is my first time flying, but they would give them like a little like gum or mint and then like some earplugs and stuff, saying I'm going to try to be my best behavior. But for like,
what a great idea!
From the child's perspective of like, this is my first time, this might happen, so sorry if it does. And I think people are generally courteous when they understand, when people acknowledge kind of that space too. But that's great to know. Yeah, I think that's important to be as well prepared. I think parenting is the Boy Scout motto, be prepared, right?
Right.
So
for anything.
For anything. And really, I think what it comes down to is give yourself the grace to know that things are not going to go the way they normally do. They might change. They might be smooth and prepared. They might be chaotic and might drive you up the wall a little bit. But
deep breathing,
and remember that you're making memories. And sometimes even the chaotic moments, like I use the example of traveling with my son 36 hours to Canada, or having to text my wife to talk to her at 8 o'clock at night. Those are funny memories. Like, remember how stressful we were in those moments and how crazy it was, but now we can look back as older parents and laugh and have fun.
Right. And that's important. And it really ties in with managing your expectations. If you go into something thinking this is going to be perfect. I know one of the analogies I can think of is the bride who is so determined that her wedding day is going to be absolute perfection.
Yes.
And she micromanages or tries to micromanage everything down to the tiniest, most insignificant detail. She's going to be disappointed. I mean, you can't micromanage life. You can make all the preparations that you want, and at the same time, as you said, give yourself grace, because I can't possibly predict everything that's going to happen, so therefore I can't possibly be prepared for everything, but I can be as prepared as possible, and I can have some self-calming techniques for me, so that when things don't go quite as planned, I have something I can resort to. I can take a deep breath. I can do some deep, slow breathing. I can ask myself, is this going to make a difference in 5 years? Is this something that is going to change the entire course of events of the world? You need to be able to put those things in perspective.
Totally. And I would say with this, if we're kind of summing up the overall conversation of the podcast today, I would say it's managing expectations or lowering them if you need to. It's kind of embracing the unpredictability, the chaos, being prepared for it as much as you can, but also knowing that you cannot control everything.
And just know that something's probably going to happen that you hadn't thought of.
I would say routine, so don't overschedule. Try to stick to routines.
Right.
Or familiarity. Get yourself a support system, whether that's a partner, and if you're a single parent, maybe have a friend or a grandma or grandpa who can come and help support as well. So trying to find somebody who you trust, who can help you when you need it. And then the last thing I would say as part of that is make memories. Like, remember that this experience is something you're going to carry with you probably longer than your kid will carry it with them, especially if they can't form memories at that point.
Yeah, the younger the child, right.
So just remember that you're building an experience, and I'm sure as kids can think about times where we had vacations with our parents, and I can think of a lot of fond memories of trips, and I'm sure I definitely remember chaotic moments, but I'm sure if I asked my dad to tell me about vacations, how he remembers them from when I was vastly different experience.
And even your siblings.
Yes.
Because the same objective event can happen, but no two people are going to necessarily experience that event the same way. And that's just a fact.
Well, Sandy, thank you so much for being here today and talking about vacation expectations. And I feel like I even have a little bit more to take for myself when I go to my next vacation. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Corey. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me.
Yes. And everybody who's tuning in today, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.